So what happens if you let someone borrow money on a note and they don't pay you? Well, that's called dishonoring a note, and we're going to find out how that's recorded in these following transactions. So we have the following are selected transactions for Paloma Company. March 21st, accepted a $6,700 180-day 10% note dated March 21st from Salma Hernandez and granting a time extension on her past due accounts receivable. So we're going to turn an old accounts receivable into a note and hopefully collect 10% interest. That'd be great. We're going to debit notes receivable, $6,700, and we're going to credit accounts receivable, Hernandez, $6,700. That's on March 21st when we sign the papers. Then, looks like 6 months later, 180 days later, on the 17th, Hernandez dishonors her note when it's presented for payment. Now, we're only going to set up what the original principal and original interest is on this note, which is going to be a debit to accounts receivable of $7,035. We're going to credit interest revenue for $335 because we've earned that much interest for that 6-month period, and we're going to credit notes receivable for $6,700. The calculation that we came up for that interest would be $6,700 times 10% times 180 over 360, and that equals $335. In the real world, you wouldn't set back up an accounts receivable because in the real world that interest would still keep ticking, and you'd have late fees and all kinds of other fees involved with this. But just to keep it simple, whenever this note is dishonored, you're only going to set back up the interest that was earned during that time period and the principal on that note. Next, on the 31st of December, after we've exhausted all legal means of collection, Paloma Company writes off Hernandez's accounts against the allowance for doubtful accounts. We're not going to really deal very much with the allowance for doubtful accounts in this chapter. It's a topic I've chose to not deal with very much, but we were going to do this. To write this off, you would debit the allowance for doubtful accounts, and you would credit accounts receivable for the amount that we've got set up here originally, which was the principal and the interest, which was $7,035. The allowance for doubtful accounts is a contra asset. That is, it is contra to the accounts receivable account. If you have an accounts receivable account, it goes right below the accounts receivable account in the asset section, and it normally has a credit balance, and it shows you how much your net realizable accounts receivable really are. Okay, so I believe that's all of this exercise.